Today, in Draw My Life, human experiments gone horribly wrong. Thanks to science, we have been able to comprehend the world and ourselves a little better. For this purpose, it is often necessary to carry out risky experiments. However, experiments do not always turn out as expected. Today, we bring you 3 experiments conducted on humans that went completely out of control. Stay until the end to tell us which one you thought was the most horrifying.
This will probably be the creepiest Draw My Life you have ever seen. Not suitable for sensitive people. Are you ready? Lindsay and Jenny are 2 American tourists that arrive in Germany to travel across Europe. On their way to a party, they get a flat tire and seek help under the rain until they spot a house with the lights on, so they knock on the door. Behind the door, there's a very strange looking man, but he's their only option. They get inside, and the man offers them a blanket and something to eat. Suddenly they start feeling sleepy, and when they wake up, they realize they have been drugged. The women find themselves in a makeshift medical ward. The man who kidnapped them is in front of them. He introduces himself as Dr. Joseph Heiter, a world-renowned surgeon. On the other side of the room, there's another captive that Heiter decides to kill because he's not a match. When the women wake up a second time, Heiter has secured a new captive, a Japanese tourist called Katsuro. The doctor explains that he is a world-renowned expert at separating conjoined twins, but dreams of making new creatures but sewing people together. He describes how he will surgically connect his 3 victims' mouth to anus so that they share a single digestive system. After listening to that horrible description, Lindsay fails an attempt to escape. Heiter explains that he had previously experimented with creating a 3-dog, and the middle dog of his creation experienced the most pain. As a punishment for her escape attempt, Lindsay will become the middle part of his centipede. He places Katsuro at the front and Jenny at the rear. Once the operation is complete, Heiter breaks their legs so they won't be able to stand up. They have to crawl as a centipede, and he tries to train them as a pet. However, Heiter becomes irritated after being kept awake by the constant screaming of his victims, and Jenny is dying from blood poisoning. When 2 detectives visit the house to investigate the disappearance of the tourists, Heiter decides to add them to the centipede, but fails the attempt to drug them. The detectives leave the house to obtain a search warrant. The human centipede attempts to escape, and Katsuro attacks Heiter, but he fails. He then commits suicide using a piece of glass. The detectives return to the house and conduct separate searches, but Heiter shoots one of them. Heiter shoots the second detective in the stomach, and he responds by shooting Heiter in the head. In the end, Jenny dies from her infection, and Lindsay is left alone trapped in the middle of her deceased fellow captives. No one was spared.
Today in Draw Club at the Abigail Project. Those who do not know Area 51 should know that it is a base occupied by the United States Army. It is said that there are numerous experiments and tests especially related to aliens. This area has been occupied since 1943. At the end of World War II, the United States realized that the power of the Nazis was largely due to the experiments performed. Therefore, to not be left behind, they ventured into tests on genetic mutation. They wanted to create supermen for the army, like a kind of superhero. They began with the search for immortality in humans. Naturally, no man wanted to be a lab rat. In addition, the chosen person should be of absolute confidence so that the experiment did not fall into enemy hands. Albert Weston, a renowned scientist within the US Army, proposed his daughter, Abigail Weston, as the best option to carry out the terrible experiment. This suggestion was very well received, and in a matter of months, the young girl would start receiving all kinds of treatment. They got down to work in what would be the Abigail Project. The experiments began. From the first moment, The reports noted that Abigail had completely lost her mind. Like a wild animal, her body had become monstrous. She was almost 3 meters high, and her skin had torn apart, so as in the bones. Despite Abigail's terrible appearance, her father still had some hope that this experiment would work. He refused to end his daughter's life. At the same time, the guilt gradually destroyed him, and 2 years later he committed suicide. He left a letter begging them to take care of Abigail. However, the army concluded that they would not feed her anymore, and thus die of hunger. They say that first night Abigail did not receive food. Unbearable yelling could be heard. The next morning all the lamps ended, upon discovering that the guards had been killed, and that a very hungry Abigail had escaped. Soldiers found her and began shooting at her. The shots did not affect her at all, and she attacked and killed the soldiers. Since they couldn't kill her, they decided to seal the entire area where Abigail was with the strongest materials they had. More than 70 years have passed since the Abigail project was terminated. Despite of this, you can still hear the laments and the noises caused by that creature. It does not know if the monster will die one day or if it will escape before. Sure, I'll put Western stars.
Knowledge can be powerful. It always has been an actual rivalry between the main world powers for achieving new scientific progress. However, they usually use shady methods to finally defeat the enemy. The old Soviet Union was one of the countries that invested more money in science. Some of their experiments have been revealed in the last decades, but some others are still in the dark. We are going to talk about one of them, the Russian sleep experiment. In the late 40s, at the beginning of the Cold War, the Soviet Union decided to study if human beings could live without sleeping. They used an experimental stimulant gas that was supposed to keep people awake. It was the main ingredient of this experiment. The researchers selected a group of 5 political prisoners. They had been promised they would be freed if they submitted to the test and didn't sleep for 30 days. They had to be in a chamber where the researchers could monitor them and see their reactions, so they could release the right amount of gas to keep them awake. The chamber was stocked with coats, running water, food, and a toilet. There were also several microphones to monitor the conversations between the subjects. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. After that, they started to show the first symptoms of insomnia. It was noted that they started to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and they started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. They all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters this way. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. When he couldn't yell anymore, the researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The second of the captives also started to scream. In the meantime, the non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them all over the wall. The screaming suddenly stopped. The researchers did not hear anything else in the following 3 days. At the end of the second week, the researchers announced that they were going to get in the chamber, and if they followed the orders, one of them would be released. A calm voice responded, "We no longer want to be freed." On the 15th day, the chamber was opened and soldiers got inside to check that the prisoners were still alive. What they saw was traumatizing. 4 of the subjects were screaming, and the other one was dead. There were chunks of meat from the dead subject stuffed into the drain blocking it and allowing the water to accumulate on the floor. The prisoners that were still alive looked like zombies. All 4 surviving subjects had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from the bodies. The subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. They begged for the gas to be turned back on. One of the subjects was gravely injured. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him. He was injected with more than 10 times a human dose for morphine and died. The one whose vocal cords were destroyed shook his head in disapproval when the doctors were going to sedate him. When the surgery ended, he asked for a piece of paper and wrote a note to the surgeon, "Keep cutting." The other 2 subjects were given the same surgery. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers asked why they had injured themselves, and the response was, "I must remain awake." All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced and they were placed back into a chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers considered euthanizing the subjects, but the soldiers wanted to see what would happen if they were put back in the gas. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment the gas was released again. It looked like they were suffering brain dead on and off. One of them couldn't resist anymore. He closed his eyes and died. 3 researchers got in the chamber. One of them drew his gun and shot the commander and the mute subject. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject and asked, "What are you?" The subject said, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you, the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal heaven." The researcher shot the subject and he weakly said, "Nearly free." The Russian sleep experiment went viral on the internet. Everyone thought it was real, but the author of the story denied it. However, we will never know what kind of experiments the Soviet Union carried out.
So, which one did you think was the scariest? Leave it in the comments and subscribe for more. See you in the next one!